Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us today as we discuss Pools and Spas webinar that Master Electricians has hosted. Today we'll be talking about a number of things to do with pools and spas, mostly with bonding and the equipotential bonds required for that. I'll get started straight away. We'll move into it quickly. Now, first of all, we should let everyone know that this information is general guidance only, and it was accurate at the time of publication. We definitely do recommend that you reference any state and territory regulations or regulators, get their advice as well. As always, you can contact us for technical advice on 1300 889 198 and speak to our technical team. So today we'll talk about the importance of equipotential bonding, the who's, the hows, the whys, the whens, the wheres. We'll talk a bit about the wet area zones, some fixed barriers and prohibited locations, and then we'll do some frequently asked questions, or more importantly, probably some Q&As from you. Obviously, we're going to refer to the AS/NZS 3000. Section 5626 is where we're going to get most of the bonding requirements from. And then we'll go into 6.3 for our damp situations and prohibited zones. So one of the most important questions we get asked is why? And ideally, we're talking, why do we need to EQ bond? But I suppose why are we doing this webinar is another great question. One of the most frequent questions, or sets of questions we get come through our tech support team, is about pool bonding and pools and spas in general. So in an effort to try and spread a bit of awareness about what's going on in this area, we thought we'd host this webinar for you and hopefully answer most of the most common questions out there. Pool bonding is extremely important as it will prevent the shock and electrocution. There's always a chance of some faults happening and occurring in the electrical equipment, and just raising that potential between the water and any conductive parts, which may increase the risk of an electric shock. And we do know of a few incidents where this has happened in the past, and more often than not, insufficient or inadequate pool bonding has been one of the major, not causes, but reasons for probably the lack of protection against shock there. Again, one of the biggest questions is who can do the bonding? Now, EQ bonding is licensed electrical work, needs to be done by a licensed electrician. No, your pool builder can't do it, then you come along and test it at the end and make sure it's fine. It's a lot of legal obligations there that you expose yourself to. So we definitely encourage all works to be done by licensed electricians only. We'll go through some more on how and when, but can't be done by the pool builder, can't be done by the homeowner, can't be done by the concreter when they're installing it, needs to be done by the electrician. So we need to put a lot of consideration into how and when we're going to do these works during the process. So planning becomes a very important process and step in this installation of the pool. So the reinforcement works need to be completed prior to the concrete works being laid, obviously, and that may require bonding each piece of the reinforcement, or it may require tying the pieces together with some steel wire to make sure they're all connected correctly. And we also need to think about other power requirements that are in the pool area. So pumps, the lighting, the bonding, all of those electrical items that will be in there that need to be bonded correctly or considered. Where are we bonding? One of the biggest questions we get comes back to our pool bonding and how far and what, and generally it's with the pool fencing, but any conductive item within 1.25 or within arm's reach of the pool edge needs to be bonded. Here's an example of an arrangement for some pools and spas that is taken directly out of AS 3000. This is figure 5.9, and we can see there the 1.25 or arm's reach on the far right hand side there, giving us that from each edge of the pool. We can see the mesh We can see the ladders, we can see the diving board there are all metallic or conductive objects that need to be bonded to remain compliant. So the pool fencing on the far left here does come into that area and will need to be bonded at those points. Again, we're going to talk about what needs to be bonded. So any conductive metal that's greater than that 100 mil in any dimension. So pool spigots, the fencing, the glass fencing spigots is another one we get often asked about. If they're bigger than 100 mils in any direction, so height is generally the one for the pool spigots that come in, they tend to be higher than 100 mil. If they are, then they'll need to all be bonded. Any ones within that 1.25 will need to be bonded back to earth. So ladders, fencing, again, the diving board, anything that may be there. Something I hadn't considered earlier, but does come in, something you don't often think about is the above ground pools. We often think about in-ground pools and what needs to be done there, but the above ground pools as well. So the pool structures on the above ground pools quite often may be metallic with the frames or the sheeting on the outside. In-ground pools, obviously the reinforcement and any other metallic objects around. And then any conductive building structures within arm's reach of the pool's edge. There's some exceptions to this, obviously, where the objects aren't going, they're separated from the ground. So timber structures or decking around that's not directly into the ground. If you're mounting a pool fence on a timber deck that's raised, that may not require to be bonded. 4 mil earth bonding conductor is required, to minimum size required to complete any of the bonding works that are there. And these can be either daisy chained or they can have individual conductors going back to an earthing junction box. That goes back to your point. Now they must be mechanically, or the conductors must be mechanically protected, and also a bit of zinc gel spray or something there to just prevent those from corrosion. And if we are managing to use some wire tie or wire ties to connect all that reinforcements that are there, and we can test to confirm that that adequate low resistance is across all points of that reinforcement, then we may only need that one bonding point to come back out. So we've seen, if we come back here, you can see all the pool reinforcement mesh. There's only one connection point onto there. And that bonding to the reinforcements made at the top in the center, and then goes out to the rest of it. So if we don't need to bond each section of the mesh, if we can tie it all, bit of tie, connect them all together, prove that they're all continuous, that will suffice. We just got a question that's coming up here. So we don't really talk, Sean's asked about using jumpers on black metal fencing between posts and panels. If it's a continuous metal fence and they've got adequate continuity between each of the posts and panels, so I'm assuming that this is all metal fencing and metal posts and panels, Sean. If we can measure and get a continuity in those low resistance between each areas that we need to be doing it, and we don't be needing to be using jumpers. But if we find that the resistance is higher in certain sections, we may need to take measures to ensure that that condition's met. So I think that'll be fine. Hope that answers your question, Sean. Anthony's jumped in as well and asked if we need to verify the bonding after a concrete pour. We do talk about that a bit later, Anthony, but obviously we recommend that the bonding be checked at multiple points throughout the installation. You check it before the pour and then you do some testing afterwards. It's going to be a little more difficult to test afterwards, especially with the reinforcement, to make sure that that's still there. But if we've got the test results early on and you can prove that it was done correctly at the start, that'll meet that there. Justin's asked if a metal panel fixed to a timber post needs to be earthed. I asked the same question earlier on. The timber post will depend on how it is installed. If it's going directly into the ground, there may be a requirement to earth that in there. But we do sort of touch on that a little bit further on. And I think Rob's actually going to answer that question there as well as we go. So jump all over that one. Thanks, Rob. All right, we'll keep working through this and I'll get to any of the more questions that pop up as they come. So classification of zones is really important to do early on in the stages of your planning. Once you know that there's a pool going in and you've been asked to do the electrical works for it, first things we're going to need to do is classify our zones that are here. So ideally, the way to do that is to decide how big the pool is or the spa. And we've got there the different classifications based on the sizes. So if we're under 680 litres, we're just a spa bath or a tub, and clause 6.2 applies. Anything over that 680 up to 5,000, we're into the spa pools, and then over 5,000 is into pools. And the different clauses are lifted there for your requirements of zones. So clause 6.3.4 will assist with the selection of the equipment you can have in it. And table 6.2 gives some really clear guidance on what equipment you can install and what equipment you definitely can't, depending on the zone you've got. So we talk about zone 0, and there's quite a lot of prohibited locations, obviously, inside the pool and things you can and can't install in there. And then zone 1 and 2, that obviously comes out a bit as we go. Just have a quick look. There's a few messages coming through there. Okay, so Justin's got another question about the metal spigot going into an earthed concrete slab. It need to be earthed. That metal spigot will need to be earthed if it is going into an earthed concrete slab. Hopefully I'm not stealing all Rob's jobs away from him there as I'm answering these questions. Scott, I will answer your question in a minute about your 2.5 mil power circuit. So I'll just leave those for now. We'll slowly go through these questions as we go. So table 6.2, strongly recommend everyone who's working with pools go through there, work out the zones for their pools and what they're doing with those. And then once they've done that, measure them up against 6.2 to find out what they can and can't install in those areas. Now, one of the things that quite often gets overlooked is the little clause down here for fixed partitions. Even though we may have some equipment that does fall inside those zoned areas, there is an option to provide a barrier or a partition that may limit the associated zones. So just because it's in that 1.25 or it's in the zones that are prescribed in AS 3000, we do have this little clause in 6.31 that says a ceiling, wall, doors, barriers, or whole heap of things there, big fence over 1.8 that's solid, that limits the extent of a room to provide a fixed partition, provides effective protection against spraying or splashing water. So that's probably one of the most important sections there, does limit those zones. So quite a lot of the questions we get through the tech support hotline is we've come to an area, that a house that has a pool, and we've gone into it and noticed straight away there's a solar inverter mounted and it's inside one of the zones, not often switchboards, but air conditioning units. So, you know, it would be quite ineffectively cost-wise to relocate some of these things, or impossible sometimes. So the only option provided to us would be to create a barrier or a partition against that. We talk about these prohibited locations, and even with barriers, there's some stuff that just can't be there. Obviously, those clauses in 6.31 do give exceptions to this, but there would need to be a pretty good barrier there. So switchboards can't be installed in any of the classified zones. The grid-connected solar inverters and battery systems, generators, they can't be installed either. And electrical equipment, pits, cabinets, pillars, anything that the electricity distributor, has provided there can't be inside that either. So any of your standard equipment that your local provider provides shouldn't be inside that pool area. So you wouldn't quite too often come across that, especially not unprotected, but something to consider when you are in that planning stage of your pool. just check how we're going with all these questions here, if there's anything I haven't touched on yet. Okay, a lot of questions about the bonding and stuff still coming through, so we'll keep sliding on with our questions, with our displays here. So a lot of consideration will need to be given to how we plan when we're designing our pool, or if we're involved in the design stages at all. But I think one of the most important things is to get in early with our builder, with our homeowners, and discuss with them what your requirements are as an electrician working on this. So you'll need to let them know what their requirements are. You need to know what has to be done and when it has to be done, and the implications if it isn't done the right way the first time. So nobody wants to be out there chasing into their pool area and concrete to try and install these bonds that are required, or relocating any equipment that needs to be relocated down the track because it's inside those zones. So ideally, install everything we can in the build stages, the bonding conductors prior to the pool being constructed. Alternatively, we can look at moving some of these things to outside those areas. So I know my pool here, there's nothing metallic within that 1.25 area. All my pool fencing is well outside the zone. I don't have anything else that could be conductive. So I know nowadays with house block sizes seeming to get smaller and smaller, the size of the pools aren't changing too much, but the fences are really encroaching on the edges of the pool, and we need to start thinking about how we're going to bond those. And maybe we can look at replacing the existing electrical equipment or relocating it. And we have even heard about some of these spigots and some other equipment being made that's non-conductive materials now. So some products out there, I saw an Australian patent trademark little device at the moment for a fencing spigot for the glass fencings that are actually non-conductive now. I think they're about 1,000 volt rated. So, you know, a good little option there. I don't think they're ridiculously cheap, but they will do the job, and they will get you out of trouble if you need to keep inside that area and you can't get the bonding requirements that you need to it. Again, documentation is going to be your friend at the planning stages, during and after. So we strongly recommend that you do document all throughout the different stages of your works. Lots of photos of your bonding. This is during the visual. So your photos of your ties, your steel tie wires that you've done there, photos of your measurements, photos of where the connection points are. If there is anything that goes wrong further down the track in the installation process, maybe someone's knocked something, at least we can see that it was all connected right from the start and all the correct works were done. We need to make sure that our connection point that we do have, that we have tested between that and every point we can find in the pool area there, to make sure that they all are within that low required or required low resistance. So any conductive equipment that's in there or materials. And we need to make sure that when it's all completed, that it has actually been built the way that we were told it was going to be built. So we need to confirm those design plans equal what we've been given or what's been produced at the end. So I'm not sure how often it happens in the real world, but we don't want to find out that we've been told the pool's going to be put here and it's actually 100 mil out, or it's the fencing's been installed close to where it needed to be because of some other reason, and now we need to go and install that bonding where we hadn't previously thought we needed to install that bonding. So we need to try and figure out options for that. So just spending a little time at the end of your job, making sure that everything's right, taking those few measurements, doing those extra few tests to make sure everything's right, and recording all those is very important. Now, the technical team here, as we've said, they do get quite a lot of questions about pools and spas and some of the requirements around them. And we have created, or the tech team has gone together and created some really great documents that can assist you in this. Some of them you can provide to the homeowners. We can see on the right-hand side there, we've got one of our documents that we provide. It's great to be given to the homeowners and let them know what's coming up, what's required of them. And the other one just makes everything clearer. The left-hand side one makes everything a little bit clearer for the contractors out there doing the installation works. what they're required to do and what they're required to know before they start doing the works and once they've finished completing it. Again, this is all available to the Master Electrician members. We can send these to you and they're available through our hub as well. MEA's technical advice team is a wonderful initiative. We offer it to all our members. You can email them on the email address here, technical@mea, or call us at 1300 889 198 to get any advice. And I would be very surprised if there was any questions that you could ask them that they haven't been asked before or that they wouldn't be able to find out the answer to very, very quickly. While we're going through there, I'll see if there's a couple of questions here that are still open that need answers there. So Anthony, hopefully we've answered your question there on the bonding after the concrete pour. Should we have 2 bond points on Rio to verify pour? Look, there's not a requirement there to have 2 bond points. If you want to do the extra work to make yourself more comfortable with how you're feeling and the test results you're getting, you're more than welcome to. But nothing requirement-wise that says that you need that. Matthew's asked, does the earth cable being used have to be installed in a conduit, or can you run the cable round, not in conduit? It has to have mechanical protection. That conductor must be able to be protected. It does. We did discuss that earlier on. So you, even in slab, it'll need to have some mechanical protection on it. So you can't just run it around, not in conduit. It needs to have that mechanical protection there, Matthew. Dave's asked, I've been asked to wire up a supply for a spa. 15 amp plug, spa's already in place. It can be installed into, the spa's already in place. It is just a case of keeping the circuit with the new power point a minimum of 1.25 from the spa and making sure the supply lead is in conduit underground until it reaches the power point. Anything that needs to be EQ bonded will come off the same circuit. I've never run a supply for a spa, that's why I've asked. So it'll depend on what the spa is. Anything that's, if it's a fiberglass spa, which many of them are, and the 15 amp plug is into an earth inside the spa unit itself and everything in there is double insulated, then we'll be okay with that plug there. Is it just a case of keeping the circuit with the new power point a minimum away from the spa and making sure the supply lead is in conduit underground? Doesn't need to be underground, just needs to be mechanically protected. And a question we did receive earlier, and I'm not sure if I've answered it, but the 4mm earth bond cable that does come from all your reinforcements or from anything else that's bonded can go back to any power circuit that does supply the pool equipment. So quite a lot of the questions we've gone is, does it have to go back all the way to the switchboard? No, it doesn't. The 4mm bonding only needs to go back to a power circuit, and that power circuit needs to feed the pool equipment. So that's just maintaining that they're all the same potential. And then it can go into a 2.5. The power circuit can be run on 2.5 out to that pool equipment on that pool circuit, or on the power circuit, sorry, that's feeding the equipment. And then from there, the 4mm earth can go, or 4mm conductor can go into that and meet in there just under that. So hopefully that answers your question, Scott. The 4mm earth connected into the 2.5 power circuit earth, that's correct. The earthing of the metal frame of the skimmer lid that is glued into an earth concrete slab. Again, Justin, it'll come back to the size of the skimmer lid. If that skimmer lid is 100mm or more in any dimension, then it will have to be earthed or bonded. All right, so we have a question here about the standard aluminium pool fencing. We mentioned that one bond is sufficient if there's satisfactory continuity all along. If there isn't, is it just a case of installing earth straps from fence panel to fence panel? That is one of the options we can do. I've seen many go underground. I've seen many go in even a extra channel being added if they wanted to keep it a little bit tidy, a little bit of black channel underneath the existing frame or existing panels of the pool, and the earthing running in there and just teeing off onto each piece so they keep their continuity going. So yes, you do need to keep that continuity all the way along, and if it isn't there, you need to get it there. So any means necessary, but it needs to be mechanically safe and it needs to be prevented from a corrosion. And you do need to make sure that we're correctly using all the right earth bonding techniques to do that. So yeah, there is some options with, it doesn't always have to be chasing into the concrete and installing those conduits in there. Like I said, we've had people run some ducting or some, aluminium underneath the fencing, along, come out, bond, go to the next one and loop them across from there. The standard talks about a metal object that is in direct or indirect contact with the general mass of earth needs to be earthed. Can you please explain what this means? It's a good question. So hopefully I get the right answer for this. So indirect or direct contact with earth. So I had this explained to me yesterday, Justin. I hope I do it justice with the answer I give you. But basically, if I install my fencing post directly onto a timber beam that's mounted straight into the ground, then I have indirect contact with the general mass, so that will need to be earthed. If that timber post goes up and then feeds some joists and then has some timber on top of that that's screwed down, then that's not in direct or indirect contact, and that wouldn't need to be earthed. So as I was explaining earlier, if I had my fence posts going directly into the ground, my pool fence post directly into the ground, or there was very little distance between. So if my timber decking was mounted directly on ground, they would need to be earthed. But if I had lifted them up off the ground and I had some frame posts and then some joists and then some timber pieces on top of that, and then my fencing was on that, then we wouldn't need to earth those inside that 1.2 or arm's reach area. When attending a site to wire a pool and the bounding earth or bonding earth is installed by others and encased in concrete, who is responsible if found to not be connected properly? As the electrician on site, you have assumed to have done those works and you'll be the person who's done them. It's very hard to prove that they're all tested correctly, as we answered earlier. I don't know how you go about testing that continuity through all the Rios being done correctly once it's laid, and that's why it's very important to get there prior to that. So we strongly advise any of our callers, when they do call up, to steer clear or very strongly word the fact that it is electrical work that's being done and it shouldn't have been done by others to start with. But it will become the responsibility of the electrician who worked there, should they go and tick it off as being okay and do the works there. So can we connect and highlight bond was installed by others? Look, at the end of the day, you can highlight it all you want, but you're the person who's going to be signing it off and connecting it. So you're signing off that you've tested it and it's been installed as per the Australian standards. And if you don't have a way of verifying that, you could potentially expose yourself legally. So be very careful with doing works that have been completed by others, and that goes for anything across the electrical industry. We definitely don't recommend doing anything if someone else has said they've installed all the cables in their house. Can you just come and fit off the points and do it? There's always that question there of what actually has been done. So no, the answer is definitely don't recommend connecting it. Does the skimmer box have to be earth even though the lid is not conductive? The skimmer box, if it's a conductive skimmer box and it's over the 100 mil and it's within the 1.25, it will need to be bonded. Question here from Sean: providing an earth bond to pumps, etc., in contact with pool water, do these items need to be bonded? Providing an earth bond to pumps in contact with pool water, I do, however, it seems like it's not needed. There's a difference between a circuit wired directly back to the board and a power outlet feeding multiple outlets around the house. Is there a difference between no, as long as that circuit. So the question is regarding does the pool circuits or the circuits feeding the pool equipment need to be, is there a difference between that equipment and stuff, the general power? If the equipment is being fed in your pool area, if the equipment in your pool area is being fed from a power circuit that also feeds other power equipment in your house, anywhere around the house, then that's fine for your earth to go back to, for your earth bond. It just needs to be feeding the same pool equipment. So obviously in the event of a fault on that pool equipment, it could raise the potential in those areas. And we need to make sure that all that bonding or the potential is all at the same earth. Do the regulations for pools and spas also apply to aquaculture tanks, 10,000 litres, and large sewage aquaria for fish? Yes, anything over 5,000 litres falls into that same area. Is there a guide as to IP rating of equipment and installation requirements of equipment, pumps, lighting, and immersion heaters. Yeah, there's lots of information there, Craig. I can send you some more information regarding those IP ratings. Table that we mentioned earlier on in the slide here does talk about the different IP ratings. I think we were talking about it in table 6.2 there. So what the IP rating needs to be for what the equipment is. All right, sliding down through some more here. Josh has got a question. Biggest drama at the moment is most often in my experience, I get called in to provide pool power and earth after the pool builder has already done the shell. 99% of the time, the customers are unaware of the earthing. How do we go about dealing with an install when we come in and the builders have left an earth tail out? There's no real easy answer for this, Josh. It's something that needs to be made more aware industry-wide. It is something that Master Electricians have been pushing for a long time. Not in the electrical industry so much, but in all industries, with pool builders, with homeowners, with everybody who's looking at the pool installation side of things. And it's even a little wider from there, Josh. There's real estates, there's inspectors that come out and do inspections. I had a wonderful email from Dave earlier this week saying that he quite often goes to houses, and some poor homeowners just bought their new house or bought a home, and he's come in to do something after the house has been bought and found out there's air conditioning units, there's solar inverters, there's electrical equipment all within the wrong zones, and he's had to inform them that their installation is not compliant, and potential to make that compliant is going to be quite expensive. And the question was asked, how does the real estate agents let this slide? How do the building and pest inspectors let this slide? How does this all go? One of the biggest things we're trying to promote is more awareness of this. Obviously, as a homeowner or someone looking to buy a new home, we'd strongly suggest that before you do that, to engage an electrical contractor to come and do an electrical inspection before you're buying a home as well, just so you're aware of that. But as far as the pool builder's already done it and told you that it's done, again, we go back, Josh, to the question we answered earlier. There's no way for you to test that continuity throughout there, and there's no way to guarantee that, it's compliant with the bonding requirements that are there. So unfortunately, if you've been asked to do that, you do expose yourself to, if something goes wrong, that it could be questioned back to you if you've signed off on it as all being installed as per the regulations and the standards. So be very careful about taking on those jobs. Obviously, we're not going to tell anyone what they can and can't do as far as what jobs they do or don't take, but we would definitely love to see all contractors and all electricians involved early on in the process, and making sure that they're the ones doing the works that are there, and they're involved in that process from the start, and they've done that work. So we can get all the guarantees in the world that we like from our pool builders, and we may have seen them work 1,000 times, but I would always love to see, if I'm testing it, I've got those results, I know I've done it properly, then I sleep well at night. Paul's asked if any of the bonding points need to be accessible, in particular the reinforcing on the pool, which is mostly underground, also the reinforcing mesh in the surrounding concrete paving. No, none of it needs to be accessible. Quite often there's that connection point there. I'm starting to see more and more people are making them accessible, but I don't know that there's any requirement to actually have them accessible. So I'm happy to be corrected if wrong, but there's no requirement to have any points as such accessible, as long as that connection's been made so that it is protected and non-corrosive, then we'll be all good. Be very careful. Oops, sorry. Just scroll up. Be very careful of connecting to existing PowerPoints. Nuisance tripping and circuit design compliance. We attend 2 or 3 pools a week and always run a dedicated circuit. Always the best option, but appreciate your advice. 2 bonding points on Rio back to earthing with Wetcon, and an earth connection box with earth bar. Allows easy post-pool completion testing. Best practice over quick, easy money always. So yeah, obviously there's preferred ways, and there's ways that are going to offer less chance of nuisance tripping and other issues further down the track. And that's very good advice there from an anonymous attendee. 2 bonding points on Rio, back to earthing via wetcon and earth connection box with earth bar. So yeah, just make sure we're putting in our signage there where required as well. If the customer buys an above ground spar fiberglass on 15 amp plug and asks the electrician to wire up a power point for it, what responsibility does the electrician have as required the EQ bonding for the area? So bought the spar and put it in an existing fresco area. Look, my advice for that is that you're installing the power point for the spar. Unless you're hardwiring it, it's just a power point. You may be aware of what it's being used for, but it could be for anything. Example, I bought the spar and put it in an existing area. I would definitely advise the customer that you're working for that there are requirements there for the bonding of the spar and that they need to have it done. But unless you're hardwiring that in, I don't think you have the responsibility to go and force them to do those works for them. So yeah, a PowerPoint, it could be there. You could go and ask me install that PowerPoint before they've gone and bought the spar, and you have no idea what it's been asked to put there for, and then they go and put it in afterwards. And like I said, unless you're hardwiring it in there or putting it in yourself, then I don't think that's an issue for them, but I would definitely make them aware of what their obligations are. What are the regulators doing about the non-compliant installations when the pool builder does not have a pool bonded? Well, again, it's going to come back to us as electricians and the contractors there to inform the regulators when this isn't being done. We have had a couple of meetings with the ESO and licensing about some of these works that are going on in Queensland. I know particularly, I'm not sure how it goes across the nation, but it is something there, any unauthorized electrical work or unlicensed electrical work that has been completed, it does create an issue. And someone else has provided some advice here on, we now always install 2 bonds on either side of the pool for Rio for the purpose of post-pour verification. Like I said earlier, very good idea. We also connect both tails from these points back to the inspection point. Excellent. I've often wondered about the potential for recirculating currents around the pool in this configuration. I'm also thinking, I'm probably overthinking it. Do you have any thoughts and opinions on this? Is this a potential issue? I don't know that this would be a potential issue. We now install 2 bonds. I think you're overthinking it. I don't know that that would be a recirculating current issue there for it. Again, happy to be corrected on that one down the track if we've got it. But yeah, if there's bonding all the way through and the earth tails are both going back to the same point, I couldn't see an issue with it, but happy to take on board any information that anyone wants to drop in for that one there. Now, there was a question here from Anthony about, please clarify the requirements for running the bonding conductor through under concrete around pool, wet areas, etc. Do we need to install bonding conductors 300 mil below concrete like we would for live power conductors? All the same wiring requirements are required there. So if it's in conduit, below concrete, in ground, whatever it may be, it's the same as any standard conductors that need to be done. So there's no difference for the installation. Whatever the requirements are for the conditions that you're installing those conductors in, they need to be installed in the same conditions. So just because they're an earth wire doesn't mean they get treated any less of a conductor in this particular case, Anthony. So yes, you do need to meet the same requirements for those, for the installation of those conductors. Rob's just said, it seems like the onus is on the electrical contractor. What onus is on the builder, the homeowner? Quite often the notification to the EC is too late. Do you have a view on this? We do, obviously. We've quite honestly have the same view as that. And that's why as electrical contractors, we need to be very cautious about who we work with and the works that we do with them. So when we are engaged, obviously documentation and consultation are 2 very important processes in all of our works. And we need to make sure that we're doing a thorough job on that. So if we are getting engaged by the homeowner or the builder, we need to make sure we let them know early that there are a lot of obligations that we need to meet, and we can't sign off the works unless they've met those. And, you know, no one likes turning away a job or a customer, but it may be in your best interest to do that should you get asked to do works that aren't meeting the standards or aren't done by yourself. So hopefully that answered my view on it, Rob. But yeah, look, end of the day, we can say it again and again and again. It's electrical work, only done by licensed electricians. If you haven't done all the works and you haven't tested them, but you're going to sign off on them as being tested as per the standards, then you're a much braver person than myself. Pool buildings are licensed trade wire. They're not instructed at the course that they are not to do EQ bonds and it needs to be done by an electrician. I'm not sure. I'm not done the pool building trade. They may have been told that, and if they weren't, then it should have been the first thing they'd done on the first pool that they ever installed, because every electrical contractor should be telling them that as they arrive at their job. And I'm sure that if the first electrician doesn't refuse to do the job because they've not done the bonding, it won't be too long before the pool builders stop trying to do it themselves and start getting us in earlier into it. So yeah, we do have to start pushing back on these things, guys, if we want to make sure that the industry does stay the way it needs to stay. And by that, we need to sometimes just not take those jobs like we suggested and letting them know that it is electrical work and that we have to have done it. So sometimes I'm not sure. They may be told that, they may play dumb, they may think it's too hard or too expensive, or that anybody can do this work and they don't need to get you in to do it. But my advice would be to knock them back once or twice, then they'll quickly learn that it needs to be done by us. So